In October, I was really fortunate to go to Cape Town to speak at the African Women Innovation Entrepreneurship Forum, which was the most amazing conference of over 500 women from all over the continent. First of all, I love Cape Town, but being in the company of these amazing women was just so special. And we got to talk about the economic impact that women can have on this continent. And there were women from all different sectors of entrepreneurship and people from technology. And we just got to spend 2 days together sharing on our own experiences and on where we see the impact that women can have on the African continent. I was just so honored to be there because some of the stories and some of the success stories of these women was just incredible. Everybody in that room had an incredible story. And so I think for me, my message to them is, obviously everybody that's here has had some measure of success, but where are we going to go to make sure that we are significant? And so it was just such a pleasure to be with these amazing women. The conference was actually opened by Mrs. Tutu, wife of Desmond Tutu, and he was there accompanying his wife, which was really special. And I got to spend time with him and just, really enjoyed being in his company and listening to him talk about his experiences on various issues in Africa. And so it was really, my pleasure to be there, but I'm excited to share the content of that conference with you, or at least the section that I was on, and I hope that you guys enjoy it.
I'm going to introduce everybody just now. We have one person short, but getting back to the crux of what I would like this panel to be discussing, and I think we've had a lot of storytelling in the morning and now afternoon, and I'm going to ask my panel, who are powerhouse women of success, to keep it powerhouse and punchy and really leave the room with something profound around the word success. And for me, I think the realness in the room is also very important, because success is not something you buy in a bottle or something that you luckily come across. Success is about falling down 7 times and getting up 8. Would you agree? And I think the realness is that, the conversations about women not supporting women and women being intimidated by men, but I think it really does start with us becoming courageous and brave, like Sarah Ann was saying earlier on. It's about understanding that we have got what it takes, and it's okay to fall down and get back up again. Now, these women, those role models that we were speaking about, are role models that have fallen and got up, I'm assuming, and who have walked the path and who have climbed the mountain. And it's through their success that we can possibly learn how to walk something. It's what I like to call sharing of best practices. So without further ado, we have Judy Dlamini. Judy, and then Gina Din and Margaret Hirsch. And I wouldn't do any justice. You all have all their details. I wouldn't do any justice. So I've asked each of them to please begin with sharing their story. And I'd like to start with Judy, please.
Thanks, Michelle. Good afternoon. Congratulations to Irene for putting together this formidable team of women, not just the panelists and the speakers, but everyone who's here. It's such an honor to be part of this audience. How do I share my story? Born in Westville in Durban, somewhere in KwaZulu-Natal, during the dark days of apartheid, and having a dream from the age of 4 to become a medical doctor, eventually becoming one after failing 2 courses at medical school, and feeling so useless and worthless, but rising up again and saying, I'm going to prove to this system that I can do it. And after that, I worked as a GP for many years because I had to raise my family, my kids, got married when I was still at medical school, and had to raise kids as I was going along with running my career, and then decided to change track. At the time, I thought it was because I was affected by crime, but I've since learned that I tend to get bored. After about 10 to 15 years, I feel like I need to leave my comfort zone. I feel like I need to challenge myself, because I'm not a confident person. So I always want to prove to myself that I can actually achieve more, because I start from a negative position of not being confident. So every time I'm proving to myself I can do this. Okay, I've done this. Let me prove to myself I can do something else. So I went into investment banking, then I changed into business. Now I want to be an academic. So that's just my journey. I can actually say more, but I'll give over to Gina.
It's so interesting that you talked about being bored, because I think successful entrepreneurs tend to get bored really, really quickly. And I know that's something that I struggle with, is that, you know, when I've built something, I then want to build something else, because I'm a great builder, but I'm not very good routine person. Anyway, I'm from Kenya. I run and own a successful and actually the most awarded African communications group. This month, we began 20 years ago in 1997. We started our PR firm, and it's been a real journey. You know, it really has. I remember when I started going to pitch to clients, and, you know, with men that I had employed, but we'd go into boardrooms of various corporates, and everybody would assume that I was the one taking the notes. And, you know, the men, you know, it was the men that worked for me were always given, you know, the main seat, and, you know, I would sit there and it's like, okay, well, and then I would do the pitching. So it was really, it's been really interesting to see. And that, to be honest with you, it still happens, you know, quite often. Or we'll go into, and this is particularly into government offices, to pitch work to government, and we'd get there and all the men would sit there, and the tea was brought, and then everybody would kind of look at me like, you know, when are you going to start pouring, kind of thing, you know. So it's really interesting to have walked that journey, and, you know, to see where it is today. But I think some of the things that we struggled with 20 years ago haven't changed that much. You know, the access to the lack of capital for entrepreneurs, the old boys network that my sister Anne talked about today. I mean, some of those challenges are still there, which is it's really quite sad that, you know, some of the, you know, when you think that you've been through, you've been successful, and then you look at actually some of the issues that we've tried to break through still exist, and that's 20 years later, which is really, really sad. And that's why, you know, having women come together like we have today, thank you very much, Irene, is so important, because we need to begin an old girls network. You know, I mean, if the old boys have a network, then we need to begin our own. And I think the other thing that women need to do, and I know it's what I've done, is that we keep waiting to be invited to the table. The invitations are not coming, girls. Yeah. You know, that's just as simple as that. We just need to take our chair and sit there. You know, we need to gate crash. Because if we sit around waiting for that invitation to come, we're going to be sitting here for the 170 years that Anne talked about today. And I think that's, you know, that it's something that I've done very well, is I've gate crashed a lot of, I'm a professional gate crasher. You know, I think that's really the truth, is that I've just gone.
Have you got 10 points to share on how to gate crash effectively?
I just took my chair and sat, you know, and whether I was invited or not. So I think, you know, successful women, and you know, I'll end here because I think a lot of the stories that we've heard today are from very successful women. And I really think this room is full of successful women. But I think that's not enough. What I think we need to be talking about is significance. Because to be honest with you, success is temporary. You know, and we have many politicians in the room, and, you know, power is temporary. These things but we need to be significant, because significance cannot be taken away from us.
I'd really like to explore that just now, and I'm going to throw that into the mix with regards to a question, because the last panel was interesting with regards to the education and the crappy, like, you know, schooling and all the rest of it. And I have a concept of, if we each take one with us, like basically mentorship, how can that become significant? So I'd like to come back to that just now. Sure. Thank you very much, Gina. Margaret.
Okay, well, I can tell you all about myself, but most you can read it anyway. But what I read coming down here in the plane in a magazine was frightening statistic. This is a statistic. 66% of all the work done in the world is done by women. 50% of all the food produced in the world is produced by women. but only 10% of the salaries in the world are earned by women. And to me, the most frightening of all, only 1% of the land in the world is owned by women. Now, I want to tell you, I break that mold because I personally own over R1 billion worth of property. And I didn't get that way, the easy way. I battled, I struggled, and I got there. But what I can tell you is that women, you have to work. You've got to stop talking and start working. It's very, very simple. You can talk till the cows come home, but until you start working, nothing's going to happen. And so with my journey, what started me in my life is my mother was widowed when I was 10. And I saw a woman who had been a very spoiled, adopted child, who'd married the boy next door and had never had to do anything for herself, thrown into a world where she couldn't cope at all. She had no driver's license, she had no bank account, she had no skills, and she'd never worked. So when I saw her age 10, when I was 10, going through that, I said, I will never, ever put myself in that position. But we were poor. We were the old proverbial poor whites, and my mother got a job for 30 Rand a month at Linden and Leicester in Durban, and we had to, she couldn't obviously keep us on that, so I got put into a foster home in Loop Street in Maritzburg, where I battled and struggled, and eventually my mother managed to get me back, and we lived in the back room of a relative's house. And we just had to struggle along. Now, I could have stayed there. But I decided that I didn't want to be poor no more. I'd had enough. But how'd you get out? And in my matric year, we were 12 girls. 8 were married the first year out of school. And I was engaged. And I could have gone and got married and just been there and stayed there and done that. But one day I woke up and said, what am I doing? So I got, and to show you how old I am, I got on a boat called the Pendennis Castle, and I went to London to go and seek my fortune. And long story short, I actually got engaged to a Chinese man. My mother phoned me and said, you come home. And I can't still to this day believe that I did. And so I came home and I met my husband. And he was 24 when I met him. He could neither read nor write. He'd been through the whole school system of this country and could still not read or write at age 24. And his father had said to him, look, you're never going to get your matric. You better go and get a job where you can work with your hands. So he did. And he started as a refrigeration technician. And when I married him, he was earning 25 Rand a week. So I sure as hell didn't marry him for his money. But I decided that I'd have to work. And after 5 years of marriage, I fell pregnant. And you can imagine, after 5 years, you're jolly glad to be pregnant. And I went and I told my boss. And my boss said to me 2 words. He said to me, you're fired. And that was the day before the CCMA. You took your handbag and you went home. What else could you do? And so I went home and I thought, what did God give me? God gave me my brains and my 2 hands. That's all I have. So that's all you need. And I want each one of you, when you go home tonight, to take your oldest lipstick that you're not going to wear because the color's dreadful, and write on your mirror, I am enough. I am enough. And that's what you've got to say to yourself, I am enough. Okay. So when you've written that, you're going to read it every day, and don't be like me when my domestic worker said, what the hell is the madam doing? She's scribbling all over the mirror, and she wiped it all off, so I had to write it again, and then the third time I said, please leave it on there. So you've got to understand that you are enough, and whatever God will never give you something that you can't cope with. So I was a shorthand typist by profession. So I started typing in the morning, the guys fetched it, typing at the night, I typed in the night, and the guys fetched in the morning, until we went on. At that same stage, it was 1976, 77, when Alan J. Holman started GAME, Dion Friedlander started Dion's, and my husband was working as a refrigeration mechanic, and he said to his boss, why don't you start discounting? His boss said, if you're so flipping clever, go do it yourself. So he came home one day, and that's how we went from having 2 jobs and no children to having 2 children and no jobs in the space of 1 year. So we had to work mighty hard, and we had nothing to fall back on, so we had to just get stuck in and do it. And we just battled and we struggled and we started. And we just had to do things. And our first shop was the size of your bathroom. And it was so small. When I started doing microwave cooking and I started teaching microwave cooking, we had to put all the fridges and stoves on the pavement, and I started teaching the ladies. And I realized that I had a gift. And those of you who've read Sylvia Walker's new book called Smart Woman, I wrote the foreword for her, and it says, and your purpose in life is to find your gift. And your mission in life is to give it away. And that's what you've got to do. And I found my gift. My gift was teaching people.
On that note, on giving or finding your gift and then sharing it. Yeah. I'd like to explore a little, and I know it's going off the track with the conversation. Mentorship. You know, if you look at how many women are out there that are failing dismally, it's lonely. Even if they are successful, it's still lonely. I think it's important that we understand what peer mentorship is. So it's not just about holding hands and being friendly with one another, but it's actually creating that 5-point plan of how to gate crash and 5-point plan of how to start that business with an unemployed husband and so forth. If I can just please go to you, Judy. What are your thoughts on mentorship and how can it serve Africa?
You know, it's interesting, Michelle, because we don't have enough people that can actually mentor the young people that we have in the continent, just in this country alone. Each one of us is so busy trying to make success of our lives that we don't have enough time to have the one-on-one mentorship. But what I've learned, actually one lady came to me the other day and said, you say you haven't got time to mentor, but you've mentored me without meeting me. You know, I actually have watched you over the years, and I looked at you doing what you do. I did an MBA after MBCHB, and because you actually were my role model. So sometimes it's not a one-on-one. One of the things that I've actually done, because I felt I didn't have the time to mentor as many people as I wanted to. I do have mentees, but I haven't got enough time to go around the many people I'd love to mentor, is I wrote a book, and that book, in my view, is meant to mentor, to inspire, because it shares the life journeys of women that are successful. I think the more we share the stories, podiums like this are very important, but only a few of us. I think one of the ministers from Malawi kept on saying, we actually need to bring people that have less, people that don't have exposure to television even, you know, because radio alone is not enough. So I believe that it's very important that each one of us lives as they rise. That's one. But the other thing that you said, Michelle, is that it's not only a mentee-mentor thing where you're actually mentoring the other generation X or Z, but it's also peer-to-peer mentorship, because, as you say, it gets lonely. Sometimes you just need to share your experiences, because when you do that, people realize that it's possible. Maybe if I do it this way, that's the best way it's going to work. But the other thing is that, going back, actually, you've had brilliant panelists. I don't think I've ever attended a conference where there was just so much formidable power on the different panelists that we've had, where you actually say, we don't see enough professionals on TV. The drama series that we see don't actually have the STEM type of professionals, so that the kids that watch those television series actually want to emulate those people.
You kind of get exposed to what
you get what's possible, you know, what's out there. So mentorship for me is bigger than just a one-on-one. It's bigger than the same, actually the different generational passing of the baton, but it's also intergenerational, but also just the books, the television series, the radio, exactly.
I think a big thing for me is that success women don't own. They don't own their success. I know humility is important, but there's nothing more exciting for me than sitting with like, I get newsflash, with women who like own their success. And I think we need to learn how to own success. And I think one of the things that I wanted to speak about, and Gina, maybe you can elaborate on it, is if we embrace our success as women, we become those role models, right? And I think a couple of people like spoke about, I think the lady from the Netherlands spoke about how her child, it kind of became osmosis that she thought she could be the president. So that is leading through example. And so once again, how do we lead through example by owning our success?
I think we need to be unapologetic about being ambitious. I think that's part of it, is that, you know, we just need to, I mean, it's not a bad thing for a woman to be ambitious. And I think that's part of it. And we, you know, we should be proud to tell our stories. quite often I interview women, and and they're very technically very sound, and I'm about to give them a job, and you want to hear their accomplishments. They will never tell you them in the way a man will. It's very rare that they will.
Like my husband, when he comes back from golf every Saturday, it's terrible how they can bloat and carry on and on. Why don't we have that?
And so you'll be interviewing, and a man will tell you, how at his previous job he achieved X, Y, Z. His company benefited by him doing. But a woman will very rarely do I get a woman who will really articulate, how accomplished she is. So I think part of it is for us to start owning our successes, start owning who we are, start owning what we've accomplished. And so I think that's part of it. When it comes to mentoring, it is very difficult to mentor one-on-one. We're busy people. I've just started something which has been really successful. It's only been a month, but I've just started a YouTube channel where there's a 5 or 3-minute YouTube message every day, and I have to film it for half a day a
What
month.
is that YouTube channel?
It's just at www.ginadin.com, and it's on there. But the feedback that I'm getting from young women, it's amazing. So I think there's different ways of mentoring. It might be writing books, but it's really important we tell our stories, because if we don't tell them, somebody's going to be telling them for us. And then the role models that that young people have will not be African role models.
Exactly.
So I think that's we have a responsibility as African women to tell our stories, the African story, and that's why and that way we can have our own narrative. Otherwise, somebody else is going to be setting our agenda.
Yeah, and once again, those role models in Africa need to be more visible.
Exactly.
They need to be visible in all sectors and all industries. Margaret, success for Africa, mentorship, what are your thoughts?
My passion and what I do is called the Girls of Dignity Project. When I was made businesswoman in South Africa in 2012, I wanted to leave a legacy, and what could I do? And I discovered to my horror, because at that stage I was 62, and I had no idea that in this country there are 9 million schoolgirls between the ages of 11 and 18 who only go, of which only 40% go to school for 4 weeks a month. 60% can only go for 3 weeks a month because they've got no sanitary protection. So with my friend Sue Barnes, we started making the reusable sanitary pads, which I take into the schools literally every week. I try and do it one school a week, and I give the pads to the girls. They last.
You go yourself?
I go myself, yeah. They last for 5 years, and we give them to the girls in the schools, and we show them. First of all, we teach them how their body works. So you see me with my apron, with my uterus and my ovaries drawn on, because I tell them that the real ones are gone. Those days are gone. So, then I show them how their bodies work, because most of them don't even know how they work. And then I've actually expanded that, and you're going to see the men in the room cringe now, because we also do the prepex, which is the male circumcision. Because circumcised males will have 60% less chance of contracting HIV/AIDS. So we go in, and I do the girls, and I have a fellow who goes and he does the boys. We teach them first of all about their bodies and how. And then what we noticed is that in the schools, because the girls were only going for 3 weeks of the month, their marks were very bad. So the girls were averaging between 40 and 60%, where the boys were averaging between 60 and 80%. So what message was being sent out to the girls?
Yeah.
So now with the reusable sanitary pads, we monitor their marks, and there's a girl here in Mitchell's Plain who went from a 42% aggregate to an 86% aggregate within 6 weeks.
Wow,
that's phenomenal. Because she could write the exam. She said, I knew I was the cleverest girl in the school, Mrs. Hirsch, but I couldn't write the exam because I couldn't go to school. Because look at my uniform, it's pale blue. If I sat down and I was too embarrassed to go, so I just didn't go.
And when you're in puberty, it's such a big thing.
It is such a big thing.
I'd like to just implore to all of you, it is the very last session of the day tomorrow, and I know you will all be exhausted from the inspiration, but the Legacy Project is about Africa's girl child and mentorship, and how we would like all of you to participate. So just a little punt on that. The final question, and please take a couple of minutes to elaborate on it. I think success, defining what success is important. Like I said earlier, I don't think it comes in a bottle, and I think a lot of youngsters or young entrepreneurs that are starting, when they have their first failure, wobble. We have an 85% failure rate of women entrepreneurs in the world. So it's not just Africa. That is the statistic in the world. And that is in the first 3 years of their business. So imagine if 10 or 20% of those women could become successful. And I think women like yourselves who have had success, what are the 3 most profound shares or lessons or syllables of advice or tools of magnificence that you would share with this audience?